I never liked the Beatles. I never really liked any British group. I don't think the British should play rock and roll.
When you think of Paul McCartney, you probably picture the charming Beatle with the boyish smile, singing about love and peace. He's a knight, a global treasure, and one of music's greatest hitmakers. But behind the friendly face and polite interviews is a man who hasn't always gotten along with his peers. In fact, over his 6-decade career, McCartney has clashed with some of rock's biggest names. Paul can be absolutely ruthless when he wants to be, said former Wings drummer Denny Seiwell. Sure, that sweet image is real, but it's only half the story. From cold backstage stares to full-on musical dices, today we're counting down the 6 rock stars who truly couldn't stand Paul McCartney. And trust us, number 1 might just leave your jaw on the floor. Number 6, Freddy Mercury. Starting off our list is none other than Queen's legendary frontman, Freddy Mercury. This feud wasn't just a personality clash. It was 2 showmen with huge talents and even bigger egos colliding at full speed. The tension reportedly began in 1976, when both Wings and Queen were recording at London's Air Studios. According to engineer Mike Stone, Freddie wasn't shy about mocking Paul. He thought McCartney's music had gotten too bland, too safe, so safe, in fact, that Freddie would wander the halls singing a sarcastic version of silly love songs anytime Paul was around. Things didn't improve at the 1977 Brit Awards. Mercury allegedly refused to sit at Paul's table, telling Queen's manager, "I'm not spending the night watching him collect trophies for airplane music." When McCartney won an award for Band on the Run, Freddie's eye roll was apparently visible from across the room. But the real blow came during a 1978 Melody Maker interview, where Freddie reportedly said, "McCartney's forgotten what rock is about." He contrasted Paul's nostalgic ballads with Queen's operatic masterpieces, calling them galaxies apart. The rivalry peaked during Live Aid in 1985, when Paul was supposed to close the show with Let It Be. Freddie allegedly fought for Queen to go later, saying, "No one follows Queen." The organizers switched the order, and Queen delivered what's now seen as one of the greatest live performances of all time, while Paul's mic cut out during his song. Freddie reportedly turned to Roger Taylor afterward and said, "That's the difference between pioneers and followers." Ironically, both men were theatrical, loved classical influences, and pushed musical boundaries. In another life, they might have made magic together, but in this one, they were rivals. Number 5, Yoko Ono. At number 5, we have the most infamous name in Beatles history, Yoko Ono. While many fans know that Paul and Yoko had their differences, the truth is their conflict went much deeper than most people realize. It all started during the Beatles' final years, when Yoko became a constant presence in the studio. Paul reportedly hated it. "Every time I looked up from my bass, there she was, sitting on the amp, staring at me," he allegedly told roadie Mal Evans. According to insider Peter Brown, things got so tense that Paul once stormed out of a recording session when Yoko started giving him bass-playing tips. After the band broke up, their relationship hit an even lower point. Paul filed the legal paperwork that officially ended the Beatles, something Yoko reportedly called the ultimate betrayal. The tension boiled over in 1971 when John Lennon released How Do You Sleep?, a brutal diss track aimed squarely at Paul. And here's the kicker. Rumor has it Yoko helped write the lyrics. One line in particular stung. "The only thing you done was yesterday." Ouch. Even decades later, things were still icy. At a private event in 2006, Yoko reportedly told a journalist that Paul was always about Paul, even when he pretended otherwise. Meanwhile, Paul told friends that working with Yoko was like trying to make art with someone speaking another language on purpose. Publicly, they've smiled and made peace, but behind the scenes, industry insiders say the tension never really disappeared. Their feud shows how personal conflict can reshape musical history, and how even the Beatles weren't immune to drama. Number 4, Frank Zappa. Coming in at number 4 is experimental rock legend Frank Zappa, the complete opposite of Paul McCartney in just about every way. Zappa's music was wild, chaotic, and deeply intellectual. Paul's was catchy, polished, and built for mass appeal. That contrast led to a feud that wasn't just personal, it was philosophical. Things reportedly kicked off in 1967 when Zappa released We're only in it for the money, which parroted Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. Paul didn't find it funny. According to Zappa's autobiography, when they crossed paths at the Miami Pop Festival in 1968, McCartney gave him the cold shoulder and allegedly muttered, "I don't appreciate being mocked by musical circus acts." Zappa, never one to hold back, fired off in a 1971 interview. McCartney wouldn't know real musical innovation if it bit him on the behind. He found a formula, and he's milking it to death. That comment reportedly infuriated Paul, who later told Rolling Stone that Zappa used complexity to hide the fact that his music had no soul. Things got worse in 1975 when they both appeared on the same TV special. Paul allegedly demanded separate dressing rooms and filming times to avoid any contact. One crew member even claimed to hear Paul say, "I respect the guy's chops, but his music sounds like an orchestra falling down the stairs." Zappa clapped back behind the scenes, telling his band, "McCartney thinks 3 chords and a smile equal genius. That's why pop music's in the state it's in." Their clash symbolized a classic battle in rock, artistry versus accessibility. And these two legends, both brilliant in their own right, couldn't have seen music more differently. Number 3, Keith Richards. At number 3, we've got the Rolling Stones' gritty guitar slinger, Keith Richards. While fans love to imagine the Beatles and the Stones as friendly rivals, Keith's view of Paul was anything but warm. He admired McCartney's songwriting chops, but thought his music was too squeaky clean and a little too polite. Paul's a schoolteacher pretending to be a rocker. Richards reportedly told a British music mag in 1970, "Everything's so bloody proper. Rock needs to be dirty. It's supposed to have some bite." According to Stones insider Tony Sanchez, Keith would openly mock Paul's softer songs in the studio, especially tracks like Martha My Dear and When I'm 64. And when the Stones released their Satanic Majesty's Request, an album many saw as a response to Sgt. Pepper, the lukewarm reception only deepened the grudge. Keith blamed Paul, allegedly saying, "He suckered us into playing his game. Never again." Their friction spilled into the public eye at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1988. Witnesses say Paul approached Keith with a compliment, only to get iced out. Richards allegedly replied, "Save it for your press kit, mate. At least Lennon had some edge." And in a 2003 documentary, Keith summed it up in one brutal line, "Paul plays at being a rocker. Some of us are rockers." Still, despite the tension, both men have always maintained a respectful front in public. But clearly, behind the scenes, Keith thought McCartney's music lacked the rawness that true rock demands. Number 2, John Lennon. Number 2 on our list is probably the most shocking. Paul's own bandmate, best friend, and musical soulmate, John Lennon. Together, they redefined what a songwriting duo could be. But as the Beatles neared their end, their bond began to unravel into one of rock's most painful breakups. It started after manager Brian Epstein's death, when Paul stepped up to lead. John didn't like it. "Paul was playing daddy, and I wasn't having it," he allegedly told roadie Mal Evans. Studio sessions got tense fast. Lennon mocked Paul's songs as granny music, while Paul dismissed John's experimental pieces as messy and self-indulgent. The real fallout came after the breakup. John released How Do You Sleep?, a bitter track aimed squarely at Paul, with lyrics like, "The sound you make is music to my ears, and those freaks was right when they said you was dead." It was brutal. Rumors swirled that Yoko helped write some of the nastier lines. In a Rolling Stone interview that same year, John didn't hold back. "Paul's productions are the worst. Maxwell's Silver Hammer was so bad I left the studio." And during the Double Fantasy sessions in 1980, just weeks before his death, he allegedly told producer Jack Douglas, "Paul writes sweet little songs about holding hands. I write about tearing myself open. We were bound to clash." But heartbreakingly, the feud may have been softening. During his Lost Weekend era, Lennon told his girlfriend May Pang, "Despite everything, no one understands me like Paul does." It's the kind of tragic irony only rock and roll could write. Two creative forces who made magic together, but were ultimately torn apart by the very differences that made them great. Number 1, Elvis Costello. Topping our list at number 1 is someone you might not expect, punk-era poet, and new-wave rebel Elvis Costello. What makes this feud so fascinating isn't just the intensity. It's how it flipped into one of rock's most surprising collaborations. Back in 1977, when Costello burst onto the scene, he had no interest in honoring rock royalty. He saw himself as the anti-McCartney. Paul McCartney represents everything we're rebelling against, he allegedly told an Emmy. Comfortable millionaires writing silly love songs while the world's falling apart. Ouch. At early gigs, Costello would reportedly end shows by butchering Let It Be, turning Paul's beloved anthem into a mocking punchline. And at a 1979 charity concert, when both were scheduled to appear, Costello allegedly refused to be photographed with him, saying, "I don't want to be in the same frame as yesterday's news." Paul, overhearing it, was reportedly crushed and later told Linda, "The kid's got talent, but no respect." But here's the twist. In 1987, McCartney, looking to shake things up creatively, reached out to Costello to co-write. Their first session, tense. Costello reportedly challenged everything Paul brought to the table. It was like he wanted Paul to prove he still had it, a studio engineer recalled. But somehow the tension worked. Together, they wrote My Brave Face, and That Day Is Done, songs critics called Paul's best in years. Costello later admitted to producer Mitchell Froom, "I spent years hating him for being Paul McCartney. Turns out, that's exactly why I should have respected him." Their journey from rivals to collaborators proves that sometimes the sharpest critics become the most powerful creative partners. And in McCartney's long history of feuds, this one stands out not just for its bite, but for its unexpected, redemptive ending. From Freddie Mercury's sarcasm to John Lennon's heartbreak, these musical clashes paint a very different picture of Paul McCartney, one that goes beyond the smiles and love songs. Whether he was defending his vision or pushing back against critics, McCartney wasn't afraid to ruffle feathers to protect his legacy. Which of these rivalries shocked you the most? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and tap the bell so you never miss a beat.